Hello again and welcome back to our course on Excel 2019 Advanced. In the preceding section, we looked at some of the basic functions associated with working with dates and times, and in this section we're going to look at 2 or 3 of the more advanced, more complex functions that I think you will also find useful. Before we do that though, I did mention that when it comes to building dates from individual components, there is an equivalent set of facilities for time. So just as a way of demonstrating this, let's run through a quick example. Now in cell B2, I have the current date and time. If I wanted to add 12 hours to that, all I would need to do would be to write equals B2 plus 0.5 and hit enter to confirm. And I can do a quick visual check and look and see to make sure that that is correct, which it appears to be. Note that whenever I update something on the sheet, the value of now is updated also because it's dynamic. Now suppose I wanted to add a much more unusual amount. So for example, say 3 hours and 23 minutes. Well, ideally, what you want to do is add 3 hours and 23 minutes to the date and time in B2. So let's type in equals B2 plus, now this time I can use the time function. And you can see my arguments underneath, so I can type in the hour, which is 3, comma, the minute, which is 23, comma, and then the second, which is 0. And close off my parentheses. And I can either hit enter, this time I'm going to click the tick to confirm, and there we go. And again, I can do a quick visual check and compare F2 to B2, and I can see that yes, roughly that time looks roughly around 3 hours and 23 minutes after. So as you can see, we have the equivalent functions that we have for building dates. Now so far we've been looking at dates with no regard for working days and non-working days. Sometimes working days are very important. So for instance, you might give someone 30 working days to pay as opposed to 30 calendar days. Now there is a function in Excel 2019 which is the workday function. And the workday function can calculate the number of work days from a given date, either in the future or in the past, and it has an added very useful facility where it can take into account holidays as well. In the first instance, I'm going to demonstrate it without the use of holidays. So I'm going to click in cell D4 and I'm going to use B4 as my starting date, and I'm going to look for a date which is 30 working days beyond the date in B4. So the function I need is workday. So let's jump up to date and time and select workday, and we get our function dialog box. So start date, that's nice and easy. We're going to select B4, and then we need to specify the amount of days. So in this case, 30. And as I said, we have a third argument we could complete for holidays. We're not going to do that just at the moment. We will do that in a second. And click on OK. And again, if I do a quick visual check, and you can check this yourself if you want to make sure that it's correct, that is roughly 30 working days in advance of the date in B4. Now let's take a look at this holiday feature. If you have a number of holidays, so for example public holidays, work holidays, etc., then you can define those as a list of dates, and Excel 2019 will take those into account when it's doing its calculations. Now on this occasion I'm going to put in a few assorted holiday dates or vacation days. Now one of the holidays where I live is the August bank holiday, and I've also included the Labor Day holiday for good measure. So let me go back to my formula in D4. Let's edit the formula by jumping up into the formula bar and just clicking before the last parentheses, and I'm going to add an additional argument. So if I do comma, it now highlights that third argument, the holidays argument. So all I need to do now is tell Excel where my holiday dates are. So I'm going to select my range, F4 to F5, and hit enter to confirm. And you can see that mine's jumped forward a little bit more than that, taking account the weekend, so it's actually brought it across into the next week. Now the other thing about the workday function is that you can have a negative value for the number of days. And if I change this to a negative value, so minus 30, and hit enter, it will give me 30 working days before. We're going to look now at something else you might have to do from time to time, and that's to find the difference between two dates. Now that sounds like it could be quite straightforward, but there are a couple of interesting quirks to be aware of. So let's start by finding the difference between the date in B7 and the date in D7, and we're going to find out first of all how many years are between those dates. Now one way of doing that is using the year function. And if you look up in the formula bar, you'll see the function that we're doing there. So essentially we're taking the year from D7 and minusing the year from B7. And when I click the tick to confirm, we get an answer of 1. Now you may look at that and say, well, that's not a whole year. What Excel is actually doing is looking at the year number in one date and then the year number in the other date and taking the difference between them. It's not really looking at how many totally elapsed years there are between those two dates. There is an alternative approach to this, and that is to use the dateDiff function. And this function is designed to show you the difference between two dates. Now one of the quirks with dateDiff is that you won't find it listed in the function library. So if you look under date and time, you won't find the dateDiff function, and you won't find it if you explore the wider function library either. So you need to type it directly into the cell. So equals dateDiff, open parentheses. The first argument is the start date, so in this case B7, comma. The second argument is the end date, so D7, comma, and then we need to tell Excel what we want it to extract. So in this case, we're doing the year. Close parentheses. So that's the dateDiff function, and you can see it says that there are 0 years. So essentially, finding the difference using years is rounding up, and finding the difference using dateDiff is rounding down, because there is not one full year according to dateDiff. Let's now turn our attention to the number of months between those dates. And first of all, in G8, I'm going to use the month function. So up to the formula bar. And I could use this combination of functions. So month D7 minus month B7. Click the tick to confirm. So if we just look at our months, you can see that 7 minus 4 is actually 3, so minus 3 in this case. So let's see how that works using our dateDiff function again. Up to the formula bar, dateDiff, open parentheses, B7, comma, D7, comma, and then we're going to specify the month this time and close our parentheses. Hit enter to confirm. And now you can see we have the correct answer of 8. If you count from July 2016 to April 2017, then that will give you an answer. There are 8 months in between. Following on from that, the next question might be, what is the number of days between those two dates? And in H9, as you can see, I've already put in the dateDiff function for the number of days. However, for days, there is a much simpler way of doing things. We can simply do equals D7 minus B7. Hit enter to confirm, and you'll see we get exactly the same as the result using the dateDiff function. Now the dateDiff function does a pretty good job, but there may be occasions when you want to do something which is a little bit outside the scope of what dateDiff is able to do. And it's very useful to be able to manipulate functions like year, month and day. Now we've seen quite a few of these date and time functions, I will leave you to read up on some of the ones that we haven't covered in this section. So you can refer to the help feature in Excel and just look for date and time functions, and you will see all of them listed here. Some useful ones I'd like to highlight: the days function, and you can see here that that is available in Excel 2013 and onwards. Some other functions that I want to draw to your attention that might be worth checking out are the network days function and also the networkdays.intl function. Both of those help you work out the whole workdays between two dates. So as an additional little exercise, you might try to set up a calculation of the net number of working days between B7 and D7 on the worksheet on the Data Functions 2 workbook. Now, as we go through the course, we will be referring to dates and times and the associated functions. But now it's time to turn our attention towards text functions. That's what we'll be looking at in the next section.